In the verses on the faith mind, repeatedly by Seng-ts'an, the third Zen Patriarch, from around 600 AD, we find the words, "Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions." At first these Yoda-like words sound hopelessly, even annoyingly obscure and Zen-like, way out of step, even antagonistic to our 21st century zeitgeist. We're in love with the search for truth and usually value those who have opinions and stick to them far more than those who hold them lightly, who won't fight for what they believe. Mind you, postmodernism has eroded certainties to such a degree that all claims can appear to fall into an amorphous slurry where all opinions are equal. But for all that, people still declaim their opinions more loudly, more stridently than ever. Once, I suppose, entry into the truth of these lines, if there is any, came only to those who meditated and, in a sense, denied their rational minds. Now I think we can understand its meaning without denying reason, but through understanding the nature of our minds. And of course, this is not just Eastern mumbo-jumbo. Our Western intellectual tradition provides a fine example of this in Socrates, who recommended rational self-examination for that very purpose, to free oneself from the errors inherent in all the truths we snatch at on the side of death. Even the thought that it could be otherwise arises from our denial of our mortality, denial of our limits. By embracing our mortality, we accept our finitude as a release from the hopeless, endless pursuit of personal perfection, which these words of the third patriarch are warning us about. As evolving organisms, we are instances of consciousness emerging from the earth. We are not God's children exiled into matter from a state of perfection because of our unwitting sinfulness, hoping to reclaim a glorious past golden age. No, our best is still before us. We don't have to be diminished and kept in line by some religious doctrine of sinfulness. It's a 2,000-year-old meme that still infects thought even in this post-Christian age. A shadow in the collective unconscious that needs bringing into consciousness. We should be free of the sense of fallenness that has poisoned our understanding of our nature and excused by explaining our inhumanity to each other. As I see it, all organisms, including us, have always constructed their realities out of a small subset of the infinite blizzard of sensory stimuli that bombard us as we roam our environment, harvesting enough energy, food, to reproduce ourselves with incremental complexity through time. We call that evolution. The reality we each experience is radically personal, and that we can't get past, yet it is collective in the sense that we are so similar biologically that these individual realities, constructed in brains from sensory raw materials, are, just like the way we run, and for the same reason, in most important ways shared. The same, while still all subtly and predictably distinct. And it's by comparing and modifying these personal constructs for overlaps, for inner consistency, mutual consistency, that we settle on our so-called truths. From this it should be apparent that I think absolute truths, with a capital T, are not in our reach, ever, period. But that doesn't mean that all opinions are equal. Truths with a small t are a matter of degree. Some truths are undoubtedly better than others because they are consistent, not contradicting others we hold, and in consensus with the truths of others who are arriving at similar truths using the same equipment, the human mind-brain. This is the best our pursuit of truth can be. Of course, if that was the whole story, then relinquishing the search for truth and clinging to opinions might be straightforward, but it's not. Thanks to Jung, we understand the overwhelming, powerful currents of the unconscious due to what he called the archetypes, the instinctual ways we form our ideas. This is a far greater reason for our gripping opinions than rationally arrived at conclusions, because being unconscious we don't realize how we are making them and why they mean so much to us. We habitually construct fine rationalizations to justify them. So the search for the self-knowledge without an awareness of the archetypal nature of the psyche remains a search for the ego. Even if we increase our circle of consciousness by analyzing unconscious material, as it is revealed in archetypal images like dreams, visions, insights, strong emotions, and irrational feelings, there are still dangers. Archetypal contents are so overpowering that they are commonly projected out onto gods or other supernatural entities that we are enticed to deny the natural source. In his paper, The Archetypes of the Collective Unconscious, Jung warns against letting one's own personal temperament condition one's theories. He also rejects the one-sided Platonic interpretation of the archetype. Jung says, in former times, despite some dissenting opinion and the influence of Aristotle, it was not too difficult to understand Plato's conception of the idea as supraordinate and pre-existent to all phenomena. Archetype, as far as being a modern term, was already in use before the time of St. Augustine, and was synonymous with idea in the Platonic usage. When the Corpus Hermeticum, which probably dates from the 3rd century, described God as the archetypal light, it expresses the idea that he is the prototype of all light, that is to say, pre-existent and superordinate to the phenomenon light. Were I a philosopher, I should continue this Platonic strain and say, somewhere in a place beyond the skies there exists a prototype or primordial image of the mother that is pre-existent and superordinate to all phenomena in which the maternal, in the broadest sense of the term, is manifest. But I am an empiricist, not a philosopher. I cannot let myself presuppose that my peculiar temperament, my own attitude to intellectual problems, is universally valid. Apparently this is an assumption in which only the philosophers may indulge, who always takes it for granted that his own disposition and attitude are universal, and will not recognize the fact, if he can avoid it, that his personal equation conditions his philosophy. Jung always identified himself as an empiricist, and according to him, the archetypes arise in our innate psyche, which projects their effects outside the psyche so they can become recognized, conscious. But this is often into an imagined supernatural realm of ego inflation and illusion. To become increasingly free of the unconscious is to see things as they are, in Jung's terms, to become more individuated, while to remain captured in the archetypal currents of the collective unconscious, and like anyone in a current unaware, is to be captured in a pre-rational instinctual program. Only when one is thrown on the rocks of illusion or overwhelmed by unconscious storms do we see how far we have drifted. So, like Jung and the 3rd Patriarch, I can't expect to find truth, and have no reason to cherish my opinions. But by increasingly interrogating and confronting the material of the unconscious, I can incrementally know myself better. This is the road to Jung's individuation and to Zen's liberation.